Hello, my name's Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Prokofiev's Fifth Symphony. And I'd like to go through this great work, exploring the structures, the themes, how the music's put together. Because if you're anything like me, I just love knowing where I am in a piece of classical music, particularly a symphony. And if you like listening closely to a piece of music and really understanding what's going on, this video, indeed this channel, might be for you. So please click like and subscribe. Now, Prokofiev started writing this in the summer of 1944. He was in this Soviet composer's retreat house, I suppose, quite near Moscow, with other composers, to get away from the kind of chaos and noise of war-torn Moscow and the other big cities. And it was quite an optimistic time that summer because, of course, the Allies were beginning to turn the tide against the Nazis in the Second World War. And the D-Day landings had happened just before Prokofiev arrived at this house in Ivanovo, this composer's retreat. And he set to work. He used some material actually from the 1930s, but by and large it's a completely new work, unlike his the third and fourth symphonies by Prokofiev, which are based on theatrical works. The premiere was on the 13th of January 1945. It was a night of triumph for Prokofiev. He was lauded for this work. And indeed he was awarded a Stalin Prize for it as well. And memorably, the day before the premiere, on the 12th of January 1945, the Soviet army began their final push, which proved to be victorious into Germany. And just as he was about to conduct his own symphony that night, there was a celebratory gunfire heard as the news had got through to Moscow that the Soviet army had crossed the Vistula, the river, into Poland. So it was a jubilant night in many respects, for Prokofiev certainly, but for the country as a whole. Now, unfortunately, it was not long after this premiere that Prokofiev suffered a fall, a kind of collapse, which he didn't really shake off for the rest of his life. His health wasn't the same again. And he never again achieved the public success of the Fifth Symphony. But it's a work which really calls out from the rooftops. It very much is a grand statement, and using old structures such as the sonata form, Prokofiev truly brings these forms into the 20th century. So the work is in 4 movements for a large orchestra, and it's somewhat unusual in that the first movement is slower. It's an Andante, but it's in sonata form, and it begins like this with the first subject. Just flutes and bassoons first. Quite stark the way that melody is presented. There's very little harmony. We do have it's rather folky like in the bass. Then the clarinet brings in this other triplet idea. And then the strings develop that idea with this kind of music, I think, very reminiscent of Romeo and Juliet, the ballet. This kind of highly wrought string music. And of course, as always with Prokofiev, the key always slides in and out. It's a typical Prokofiev move, isn't it? We're in F initially, with the first statement, and now we've kind of slid into A major. I love that about Prokofiev's music. And the music kind of transmogrifies. We reach a transition section which is quite lengthy, where the main theme is built upon the first subject, but we hear this other related theme as well, which goes like this. And then we hear this kind of military rhythm in the brass. We have more detours through rather strange keys, but then Prokofiev, in true classical fashion, reaches the dominant F major, and we have this new theme we hear on the flutes and oboes, poco più mosso, more moving here. Etc. Rather lovely melody, quite romantic actually. And then we hear an additional theme. This is the Codetta theme, right at the end of the Exposition. Initially we hear this fortissimo. And we have this really distinctive idea, heard on the violins. The development's really great because it brings back all the themes we've heard, pretty much. We begin in the cellos and basses with the first subject. Etc. We hear that triplet idea as well from the first subject, on the solo cello this time I think. We keep reminded also of that Codetta idea. Etc. And also that Codetta idea, that semiquaver idea, comes back with full force, gains a life of its own in this development. We then reach the heart of the development, where we suddenly are presented with the second subject in all its romantic glory. Then we get to the recapitulation, and Prokofiev this time presents the theme as a brass chorale. We have the transition, and then the second subject firmly in B flat major. We have the Codetta, fortissimo this time, and we have the rather grandiose Coda, in which Prokofiev includes everything he possibly can in the entire orchestra, including pianos and harps, to round off this rather stirring movement. The second movement, the Allegro marcato, is a scherzo in a kind of modified ternary form, and it begins in a typically kind of mischievous Prokofiev fashion. This motor rhythm in the violins. We're in D minor, and we have this idea on the clarinet. That basically is the main theme of this scherzo. But we do hear it in various guises. You also hear this rhythm. Particularly in the brass. In this A section there is this subsidiary idea, kind of slithers and slides all over the place. That kind of thing. But that doesn't last long, we're back into this swooping variant of the theme. That kind of thing. And eventually the music winds down and we reach the trio, the B section, which is in D major, the tonic major. And we hear on the winds this idea. This idea bookends the trio actually, because in the middle we have this kind of waltz-like music almost. And we have another typically Prokofievian, is that a word? Prokofievian touch here. Again, those keys sliding in and out. Eventually we get to the reprise of the A section, but it's different. It's like Prokofiev's taken the original scherzo idea and kind of stuck it in a tumble dryer or something, because it comes out a bit weird and a bit all over the place. It begins very slow as well, and eventually we get to that tune. We get back to the right speed after the cello and the theme becomes more familiar. Before we are led into a helter-skelter coda. The third movement, the Adagio, is really in a form of its own. It's quite episodic in a sense, although it does contain a development section, and we do really get a sense of depression in this movement. I think it's the only movement where we do really feel a sense of anguish, and particularly in the opening section and the section that closes it. Prokofiev has these ideas. It's in 3/4, but there's 3s and 2s working together. Back in D minor. It's like cogs in an infernal machine, this music. It's music which kind of pulls the life out of you. And I mean that in a positive sense, because it's great music, but it kind of wears you down. I guess a bit, perhaps like the Soviet machine. Perhaps it's the inner workings of the Stalinist society Prokofiev worked under. Dun, 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 dun. Like some infernal clock. We have some more kind of anguished string music here, reminiscent of the first movement. This I think very much like Romeo and Juliet. Beautiful, anguished, tortured string writing there. The tread of the beginning returns after this kind of outpouring of passion. This clock-like music gains some new life. I love that bit, I think it's terrific. We then move into a new section, a B section, and the form for all these movements are down below in the description with bar numbers if you're following with a score. We have this rhythm. Etc. Goes on throughout this section with this melody underneath. And then we move into a new section, a C section, which goes like this. Which has this rather baroque sounding trill in it. That kind of thing. We then have a powerful development section, which I call section D. We have that funeral music we just heard. Da, 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 da. But we have that melody from the B section as well. But dum, ba bum, ba bum. We hear that rhythm all the time. But then in this wonderful passage, and I think this is absolutely incredible. We go back to the opening music. You remember? Remember that? Well, this time it's turned into this almost circus fairground music. Perhaps this is some kind of darkly satirical take on the inner machinations and repression of Soviet society. We then go back to the A section proper before we have a coda based on that eerie clock-like music we heard right at the beginning. The finale is a rondo, and before we hear the rondo theme there is an introduction. And the introduction begins with this idea which to me suggests Till Eulenspiegel by Richard Strauss, if you know the opening of that tone poem. There's a kind of once upon a time feel to it. And we then have a restatement of the opening first subject of the of the first movement, but this time cello choir texture. We've got a bit of continuity in the work here. And then we hear the rondo proper. It's kind of got this cheeky energy about it, this music. B flat major. Cheeky, sarcastic music. And we have this idea in the violins as well. That kind of thing. So that rondo theme keeps coming back in this movement. We have a transition where we have this idea. Before we hit the B section, we move from B flat major to F, the dominant. And this has got similarities with the opening idea in the introduction. When the A section comes back, it's varied slightly. The music is stretched out a bit in terms of its duration. And we have the introductory music as a transition then before we go to a new tune, which I call section C. And we hear this chorale melody. Very much a needed contrast in texture from the rest of this frenetic movement. Then we go to another transition before we come back to A again. Etc. And then we have a restatement of the B tune again, if you remember that. And then we come into a coda. I love this coda because right at the very end, Prokofiev strips away the whole orchestra and we're left with this kind of band, kind of scratching away. This kind of like, almost like a folk band. Have a listen to this. And that's Prokofiev's Fifth Symphony. A great work, and if you don't know it, check it out. Thanks for watching this video. If there's any videos you'd like me to make in the future, please put the suggestions in the comments below. Please click like and subscribe, and if you can afford to, please consider donating to help me make more of these videos. All the best, take care, bye.